2009. PCA peanut butter. In 2009, one of the deadliest food poisoning outbreaks in modern U.S. history was traced to the Peanut Corporation of America, PCA. The outbreak involved Salmonella typhimurium linked to peanut butter and peanut paste produced at the company's Blakely, Georgia plant. The contamination spread widely because PCA was a supplier to dozens of food manufacturers, meaning its ingredients ended up in everything from crackers to granola bars. By the time it was contained, more than 700 people across 46 states were confirmed ill, and at least 9 deaths were attributed to the outbreak. Millions of pounds of peanut products were recalled, and it became one of the largest food recalls in U.S. history. Investigators later discovered appalling conditions at the PCA facility: leaky roofs, rodent infestations, and positive salmonella tests that were ignored. Emails from company executives revealed they knowingly shipped products that hadn't been cleared as safe, prioritizing profit over consumer safety. In 2015, PCA's owner, Stuart Parnell, was sentenced to 28 years in federal prison, the stiffest penalty ever handed down for a foodborne illness case. 2011. Cargill ground turkey. In 2011, one of the largest meat recalls in U.S. history was triggered by a deadly outbreak tied to ground turkey produced by Cargill Meat Solutions. The outbreak was caused by a strain of Salmonella Heidelberg, which is known for being especially resistant to antibiotics. Cases were first reported in early summer, and by August, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention had linked illnesses across the country to ground turkey, traced back to Cargill's plant in Springdale, Arkansas. By the time the outbreak was declared over, there were 136 confirmed illnesses in 34 states, and at least 1 death was attributed to the contamination. Many victims required hospitalization due to the severity of the infection and the strain's drug resistance. Cargill issued a recall of 36 million pounds of ground turkey, making it one of the largest meat recalls ever. Just weeks later, the company recalled another 185,000 pounds after more salmonella was detected in the same facility. 2013. Foster Farms chicken. In 2013, a prolonged outbreak of Salmonella Heidelberg was linked to chicken produced by Foster Farms, one of the largest poultry companies in the United States. The outbreak stretched for over a year, from March 2013 to July 2014, and became notorious for its scale and persistence. By the end, the CDC confirmed over 630 illnesses in 29 states and Puerto Rico, though the real number was believed to be much higher, since many cases of salmonella go unreported. Nearly 40% of patients required hospitalization, which was far above average, because several of the salmonella strains involved were resistant to multiple antibiotics. The chicken was traced to Foster Farms plants in California, but unlike many other high-profile outbreaks, there was no massive recall at the start, because salmonella is not legally considered an adulterant in raw poultry. Foster Farms was allowed to continue operations while issuing only limited recalls. This sparked public anger and debates about loopholes in food safety laws. Foster Farms eventually made major operational changes under USDA pressure, including new safety protocols and plant-wide renovations. By the way, I'm going to be posting a lot here, so it would mean a lot if you subscribed and dropped a like for the algorithm. 2015. Mexican cucumbers. In 2015, cucumbers imported from Mexico became the source of one of the largest multi-state salmonella outbreaks in U.S. history. The outbreak was caused by Salmonella puna, a strain that can be especially dangerous for children, the elderly, and people with weakened immune systems. Investigators traced the contaminated cucumbers to Andrew and Williamson Fresh Produce, a distributor based in San Diego that imported them from farms in Baja California, Mexico. Between July 2015 and March 2016, the CDC confirmed over 900 illnesses across 40 states, with at least 6 deaths linked to the outbreak. Nearly 200 people required hospitalization. The cucumbers were sold under brand names like Limited Edition and Fat Boy, and they were distributed to grocery stores and restaurants across the country. The scope of the outbreak led to multiple recalls, but because cucumbers have a short shelf life, many had already been eaten by the time public warnings went out. 1993, Jack in the Box hamburgers, the most infamous food poisoning outbreaks in U.S. history, happened in 1993 and forever changed how Americans thought about food safety. The outbreak was caused by E. coli O157:H7 in undercooked hamburgers served at Jack in the Box restaurants across 4 western states: Washington, Idaho, Nevada, and California. The contaminated beef had been supplied by a California meat processing company and was not cooked to the USDA's recommended safe temperature before being served. The consequences were devastating. More than 700 people were sickened, and 4 children died from complications of E. coli infection, including hemolytic uremic syndrome, which can cause kidney failure. The majority of victims were children, which made the tragedy even more shocking to the public. The Jack in the Box outbreak triggered sweeping changes in food safety regulation. It led the USDA to declare E. coli O157:H7 an adulterant in ground beef, making it illegal to sell meat contaminated with the bacteria. It also spurred the adoption of hazard analysis and critical control points, HACCP, systems in meat plants, requiring stricter monitoring of food safety risks. 2006. Dole baby spinach. In the fall of 2006, the United States experienced one of the most high-profile produce-related food poisoning outbreaks in history, traced to fresh spinach packaged by Dole. The outbreak was caused by E. coli O157:H7, one of the most dangerous strains of the bacteria. Investigators linked it to bags of fresh baby spinach processed in California's Salinas Valley, an area often referred to as America's Salad Bowl. The contamination is believed to have originated from nearby cattle manure and irrigation water that came into contact with spinach fields. The numbers were alarming. The CDC confirmed 205 illnesses across 26 states, with at least 103 hospitalizations and 3 deaths. Many of the patients were otherwise healthy adults and children, highlighting just how severe this strain of E. coli can be. The outbreak led to a nationwide recall of all packaged spinach, regardless of brand, as regulators struggled to identify the source quickly. For weeks, supermarkets pulled spinach from shelves, and Americans avoided buying it altogether. The crisis prompted the produce industry to establish stricter food safety practices, including the California Leafy Greens Marketing Agreement, which introduced new standards for irrigation, soil management, and field inspections. 2006. Taco Bell fast food. In December 2006, Taco Bell became the center of a major E. coli O157:H7 outbreak that spread across multiple states. The CDC and FDA eventually traced the contamination to shredded iceberg lettuce used at Taco Bell restaurants in the Northeast. The supply chain for the lettuce ran through California's Central Valley, the same region implicated in other leafy green outbreaks around that time. The outbreak sickened 71 people in 5 states, with more than 50% of cases requiring hospitalization. Many of the patients developed hemolytic uremic syndrome, the dangerous complication of E. coli infection that can lead to kidney failure. At first, Taco Bell faced intense scrutiny, with critics pointing to lapses in their supply chain oversight. After investigations, the company cut ties with some produce suppliers and made changes to how its lettuce and other vegetables were sourced, washed, and handled. 2015. Chipotle Mexican Grill fast food. In 2015, Chipotle Mexican Grill faced a series of foodborne illness outbreaks that nearly crippled its brand reputation. Unlike most outbreaks that involve a single pathogen or food, Chipotle's crisis involved multiple separate incidents in the same year. The most serious was an outbreak of E. coli O26, which sickened 55 people across 11 states between October and December 2015. Investigators never identified a single ingredient as the source, but fresh produce, such as lettuce and cilantro, were considered likely culprits. At the same time, Chipotle dealt with a salmonella outbreak in Minnesota, traced to contaminated tomatoes that sickened 64 people. On top of that, there were norovirus outbreaks linked to Chipotle locations in California and Massachusetts, affecting more than 250 customers and employees combined. The repeated incidents made national headlines and sparked a dramatic loss of consumer confidence. Chipotle's stock price plummeted, sales dropped by nearly 30%, and the company temporarily closed some restaurants for deep cleaning and food safety retraining. In the aftermath, Chipotle overhauled its entire food safety system, implementing new produce sanitization protocols, DNA-based ingredient testing, and stricter supplier audits. 1977. Trini and Carmen's hot sauce. In 1977, Detroit experienced one of its worst restaurant-related food poisoning outbreaks, traced to hot sauce served at a popular local chain called Trini and Carmen's. The outbreak was caused by botulism, a rare but extremely dangerous form of food poisoning that can lead to paralysis and death. Investigators discovered that the hot sauce had been improperly canned and stored, creating the perfect conditions for Clostridium botulinum bacteria to grow and produce its deadly toxin. More than 50 people were sickened, and several required hospitalization with severe symptoms, including blurred vision, difficulty breathing, and muscle paralysis. Health officials moved quickly to shut down the restaurants and recall the contaminated sauce, but the damage to the brand was irreparable. 2015. Home canned potatoes. In April 2015, a small church potluck in Lancaster, Ohio, turned into one of the deadliest botulism outbreaks in decades. The source was traced to home-canned potatoes used in a potato salad brought to the event. The canning process had been done improperly, creating the perfect environment for Clostridium botulinum spores to produce their toxin. Unlike other bacteria that can spoil food visibly, botulism toxin leaves no taste or smell, making it especially dangerous. Within hours of the potluck, people began experiencing blurred vision, muscle weakness, and difficulty breathing. In total, 29 people were hospitalized, and 1 woman died from the poisoning. Many victims required intensive care, including ventilators to help them breathe. Low-acid foods like potatoes require pressure canning at high heat to kill botulism spores, but when shortcuts are taken, the results can be deadly. 1985. Jalisco Products cheese. In 1985, the United States experienced the deadliest foodborne illness outbreak in its modern history, and the source was cheese made by Jalisco Products, a small dairy company in California. The outbreak was caused by Listeria monocytogenes, a bacterium that can thrive in dairy products when sanitation is poor. The contamination spread through Jalisco's soft cheeses, such as queso fresco and queso blanco, which were distributed widely to Hispanic communities in Southern California. The results were devastating. The outbreak led to 142 confirmed illnesses, 48 deaths, and 20 miscarriages or stillbirths linked to infected mothers. It hit pregnant women especially hard, as listeriosis is particularly dangerous during pregnancy. Investigators found that the dairy plant had poor sanitary conditions, including unclean equipment and improper pasteurization. 1998 to 1999. Hot dogs. Between 1998 and 1999, a deadly outbreak of Listeria monocytogenes was linked to hot dogs and deli meats, making it one of the most serious food safety incidents of the late 20th century. The contaminated products were traced to a Bilmar Foods processing plant in Zeeland, Michigan, which was owned by Sara Lee Corporation. Investigators found that sanitation problems inside the facility allowed Listeria to spread into ready-to-eat meats, like hot dogs, and packaged deli slices, foods that consumers typically eat without further cooking. The outbreak led to at least 100 confirmed illnesses in 24 states, 21 deaths, and 6 miscarriages or stillbirths. Because Listeria is especially dangerous to pregnant women and those with weakened immune systems, the impact was severe and tragic. Sara Lee recalled 15 million pounds of meat products, one of the largest recalls of its kind at the time. The incident cost the company hundreds of millions of dollars and resulted in multiple lawsuits from victims' families. 2002. Pilgrim's Pride turkey meat. In 2002, one of the most serious Listeria monocytogenes outbreaks in the United States was traced to turkey products made by Pilgrim's Pride, the second largest poultry company in the country. The outbreak originated from the company's processing plant in Franconia, Pennsylvania. Investigators later determined that the facility had long-standing sanitation issues that allowed Listeria to contaminate ready-to-eat turkey deli meats. Because these products were typically consumed without further cooking, the bacteria reached consumers directly. The toll was severe. The the CDC reported 54 confirmed illnesses across 8 states, with 7 deaths and 3 miscarriages or stillbirths linked to the outbreak. Many of the victims were pregnant women, newborns, or people with weakened immune systems, the groups most vulnerable to listeria. In response, Pilgrim's Pride issued a recall of 27.4 million pounds of turkey and chicken products, one of the largest meat recalls in U.S. history at that time. The company temporarily shut down the Pennsylvania plant, and the incident triggered lawsuits and widespread criticism. 2011, cantaloupes. In 2011, one of the deadliest foodborne illness outbreaks in U.S. history was traced to contaminated cantaloupes grown at Jensen Farms in Colorado. The outbreak involved Listeria monocytogenes, a bacterium that thrives in cold, moist environments. Unlike most foodborne pathogens, Listeria is especially dangerous for pregnant women, newborns, the elderly, and people with weakened immune systems. The contamination spread widely because the cantaloupes were shipped nationwide before the problem was detected. By the end, the CDC confirmed 147 illnesses across 28 states, with 33 deaths and 1 miscarriage. 2 additional deaths were later linked to the outbreak, making the final toll 35 deaths, the deadliest U.S. foodborne outbreak since the 1920s. Investigators found that the Jensen Farms facility had serious sanitation failures. Instead of using proper washing equipment designed for melons, the farm had installed machinery originally meant for potatoes, which was harder to sanitize and allowed bacteria to spread. In addition, the melons were not adequately cooled after washing, creating conditions where listeria could multiply. The tragedy devastated Jensen Farms, which filed for bankruptcy after lawsuits from victims' families. 1997, frozen strawberries. In 1997, a major hepatitis A outbreak in the United States was traced to frozen strawberries, marking one of the largest school-related foodborne illness outbreaks in history. The contaminated strawberries had been imported from Mexico and were distributed through the U.S. Department of Agriculture's school lunch program. They were served in cafeterias across multiple states before anyone realized they were carrying the virus. By the time the outbreak was over, at least 153 people were sickened, most of them school children, though later estimates suggest the number of actual cases may have been higher. Several required hospitalization, but there were no reported deaths. Investigators determined that the strawberries likely became contaminated with hepatitis A during harvesting or handling. Because the fruit was frozen and served without cooking, the virus survived the processing and made it to students' plates. 2003, Chi-Chi's salsa and chili con queso. In late 2003, a Chi-Chi's restaurant in Beaver County, Pennsylvania, became the site of the largest hepatitis A outbreak ever recorded in the United States. The outbreak was traced to green onions imported from Mexico that were used in salsa and chili con queso at the restaurant. The onions had been contaminated with the hepatitis A virus during harvesting or handling before reaching the restaurant's kitchen. The results were devastating. More than 650 people were infected, with at least 4 deaths and dozens hospitalized with severe liver complications. Hundreds of others had to receive emergency immune globulin shots after exposure to prevent further spread. The outbreak bankrupted the Chi-Chi's chain in the U.S., which never recovered its reputation. 2016. Tropical smoothie cafe drinks. In 2016, a large outbreak of hepatitis A was linked to smoothies sold at tropical smoothie cafe locations across several U.S. states. The source of contamination was identified as frozen strawberries imported from Egypt. These strawberries were used in multiple smoothie blends and distributed to tropical smoothie cafe outlets, primarily in Virginia, but also in surrounding states. Because the fruit was frozen and served raw, the virus was able to survive and spread widely. By the end of the outbreak, the CDC reported 143 confirmed illnesses across 9 states, with the majority in Virginia. Many victims required hospitalization, and health departments scrambled to administer post-exposure vaccines to people who had consumed the smoothies before the recall was issued. Tropical Smoothie Cafe quickly pulled all Egyptian strawberries from its stores and switched suppliers. 2015, Bluebell Ice Cream Listeria. In 2015, Bluebell Creameries, a century-old Texas-based company beloved across the southern United States, became the center of a deadly Listeria monocytogenes outbreak. The outbreak was first detected after several patients in Kansas were hospitalized with listeriosis. All of them had been served milkshakes made with Bluebell ice cream from a single hospital cafeteria. The investigation soon uncovered a wider pattern. Multiple Bluebell facilities were producing products contaminated with listeria. By the time the outbreak was contained, the CDC confirmed 10 illnesses across 4 states, with 3 deaths. While the numbers were smaller than some outbreaks, the severity of listeria infections and the fact that they were traced to such a trusted, iconic brand made the case stand out. Bluebell responded by recalling all of its products from shelves nationwide, the first total recall in the company's history. For months, Bluebell halted production entirely, retrained employees, and overhauled its sanitation practices. The recall devastated the company financially, leading to massive layoffs and a restructuring. 2018, romaine lettuce E. coli outbreak. In 2018, romaine lettuce became the center of one of the most widespread E. coli outbreaks in U.S. history. The outbreak was caused by E. coli 0157:H7, the same dangerous strain linked to other major food safety crises. Contaminated romaine was traced back to farms in the Yuma, Arizona growing region, a major supplier of leafy greens to U.S. markets during the spring harvest season. By the time the CDC declared the outbreak over, 210 people across 36 states had been infected. Of those, 96 were hospitalized and 5 died. Many of the cases were severe, with multiple patients developing hemolytic uremic syndrome, a life-threatening complication that can cause kidney failure, because romaine lettuce is often eaten raw and distributed nationally in large volumes. The outbreak spread quickly before warnings were issued. The FDA advised consumers to avoid all romaine lettuce unless they could confirm it was not grown in the Yuma region. Grocery stores and restaurants pulled the product from shelves, and supply chains were severely disrupted. 1996, Odwalla juice E. coli outbreak. In 1996, Odwalla, a California-based company known for its fresh, unpasteurized fruit juices, was at the center of a deadly outbreak of E. coli 0157:H7. The contamination was traced to a batch of unpasteurized apple juice sold in the western United States and Canada. Odwalla marketed its juices as natural and healthier because they weren't heat-treated, but this lack of pasteurization left the juice vulnerable to dangerous bacteria. Investigators later determined that apples that had fallen to the ground and may have come into contact with animal feces were used in the juice, introducing the pathogen. The outbreak caused 70 confirmed illnesses, most of them in children. At least 14 developed hemolytic uremic syndrome, a severe complication that can cause kidney failure. Tragically, a 16-month-old girl in Colorado died after drinking the contaminated juice. Odwalla issued a massive recall of all its apple juice products, and the crisis nearly destroyed the company. It paid millions in settlements to victims' families and was forced to change its production methods, including adopting pasteurization to ensure safety. If you enjoyed this, I'm going to be posting a lot here, so it would mean a lot if you subscribed. Thanks for watching.